start the discussion for today. Today is going to be a little less formal because I'm going to throw you guys out some concepts about this this topic that we're discussing today. It's going to be more concept based rather than actual science. But I'm certain as we discuss it, you guys will start to come up with your own ideas and kind of understand more about this topic that we're discussing today. And the topic today is matriarchal mathematics. Okay, we're talking about matriarchal mathematics and the power of femininity. Okay, so before we get into what is matriarchal mathematics, let's get into what is mathematics. Okay, mathematics, as we all know, is math. It originated in ancient Kemet, right? Ancient Kemet is the name for Egypt. Okay, so Egypt used to be called Kemet back in the day, which means land of the blacks, in case you didn't know. And it also originated in what was known as Al-Kabilon. Al-Kabilon, that's the real name of Africa. Okay, so in ancient Egypt and Al-Kabilon, it originated with this concept of Mayat. Mayat was an Egyptian goddess who embodied and personified the ideas of truth, order, balance, morality, and justice. Okay, so math, as you can see, is very similar to this word here, Mayat. The goddess embodied these concepts of truth, order, balance, morality, justice, and also harmony. I'm going to write that up there as well. Harmony. Now these are the origins of mathematics. This is where mathematics was first birthed, where it originated from. Okay, and we know this because we have certain things like these are some of the oldest artifacts found containing mathematical symbols and concepts. The Rhine papyrus and the Moscow papyrus. In case you guys didn't attend the last class, I explained how the papyrus was the sedge plant that they originally used to make the first form of paper, right? That's where we get the paper from. From the papyrus plant, they used to break it down and make their first form of paper, where we discovered some of the first forms of writing in Egypt. So this is how we know that math originated in Egypt. So now you can see, and also this is the hieroglyph how they would use to denote the goddess Mayat. She had a feather on her head because they would say in your afterlife they would weigh your heart on a scale with the feather, and if your heart was lighter than the feather, then it wouldn't get eaten by this other goddess or whatever. But she was always seen with a feather on her head. All right. So as you can see, when math first originated, it was closely tied to principles of morality here. You know, this is important to understand that the ethics was tied into the actual structure of what it actually was. So it was thought in Egypt that you couldn't have math without truth and balance. That's why we get things like the equal sign now, right? Because that symbolizes the balance, right? And so you couldn't have math without the other. In opposition to Mayat, I guess her counter would have been the goddess Isfet, which represented chaos. Chaos and disorder. So this is important to understand because today, now when we study mathematics, a lot of times things aren't necessarily looked at ethically. Like they just cut down 10 trees, you know, who cares about the harmony of what's going on or the morality of whether it's good or not? You know, can we get to space? You know, that's what we're really concerned with. But back in the day, these concepts was heavily tied together. And also take note that the goddess was actually a goddess and not a god in ancient Egyptian times. So they thought of it as feminine qualities and aspects to mathematics, balance and harmony. So now let's get into this concept of matriarchal mathematics. What does that mean, matriarchal mathematics? Okay. So Today, mathematics is viewed through a certain lens, and we may not realize it because we've been taught it so well, but we don't realize that we're actually learning through patriarchal lens, okay? Patriarchal is dealing with masculine for the man, right? So we get things like force, external force. We look at what's currently seen in our external realities, right? Because it's generally thought masculine principles deal with externality. How can we go out into the world and make changes? Where feminine principles deal with internal properties, right? Now, why is it important to look at internal properties when we're discussing math, right? I remember before, I don't know if you guys recall, but I said there were two ways that we can see, right? We see like this, and then we see like this. Okay, I explained this before, how this eye is your regular eye. You look with your eye, right? But we actually see things with our minds. This is if you didn't attend the other class, it was an analogy for the mind. This represents 6 senses: sight, smell, hearing, taste, touch, and thought. Because in ancient Egypt, another sense that they had beyond the 5 senses was also the sense of thought, right? So we'll ask ourselves, how do we see? I'm going to say this is just sight. But under the patriarchal system, we're dealing with mathematics based upon our sight. On a matriarchal, we're dealing internally based upon our minds, right? How do we see with our minds, you might ask, right? If I told everybody in here to close their eyes and picture a ball, right? You can close your eyes and you would think of a ball. It might be a basketball, might be a beach ball, might be a volleyball, but you'd be able to see, construct it visually in your mind. How are you seeing that with your eyes closed? You ask yourself. It's because you're seeing with something else here. And actually, a great deal of our lives are spent internally. Majority of our lives are spent internally. You actually get, I'm going to say you're supposed to get, quote unquote, 8 hours of sleep a night, right? So half of the time, if you're dreaming, if you are taking care of yourself, if you are having those dreams, you're seeing things, you're having these visions and stuff. How do we mathematically quantify what we're looking at? How does that translate into what we call our sight reality? But the dreams are actually a part of our reality as well, because everybody has them as well, And another concept that matriarchal mathematics would touch upon is we tend to measure time based upon our sight, right? But have you ever had a dream where you woke up and you're like, dang, how long have I been out? Felt like it was forever in that dream. How does time actually move in your dream? Is it the same? Because time on planet Earth is only based upon our position to the sun, where we're rotating around the sun. Where if the sun is here, it's daytime. Where the sun goes down now, it's nighttime. So time is only relative to position when we're awake. But when we're asleep, how does time work if there is no sun in the dreams? Because our consciousness is shifted. So these are some of the ideas and topics we'd be able to discuss if we look into matriarchal mathematics, the mathematics of the internal world and not the external, right? So let me give you what I propose to be. This is stuff that I'm versed with, but concept that I'm coming up with for you guys personally. Sorry if I butchered the spelling. I don't know. Okay? So this is going to deal with intrinsic value, So some of the concepts of matriarchal mathematics is going to be dealing with intrinsic values, and those are putting the numbers to the things that, how do I measure the ball that I saw in my head? Would I still use the same measurement? You know, it would answer some of these questions here. Connectivity, I'm going to talk about connectivity and also systems. But first I want to discuss this word here, value, because also a part of today's class is value and appreciation for matriarchal mathematics and feminine energy. This is where we'll start to discuss and understand the properties of feminine energy more, right? How do we value things, okay? In order to value something, you have to associate it with a quantitative or qualitative aspect, which means that first, in order to value something, you must first acknowledge it. All right, for instance, what do I mean by that? In our culture, we value time. People say, hey, you're wasting my time. Hey, you know, we have all these different concepts about time where we value our time. But other cultures, they don't necessarily see time the same way that we do. Okay? So they might not value time as much as we value it, because we tend to put numbers on everything. We tend to put, hey, show up at this time. We have a date at this time, make sure you're there. We know 5 minutes early is on time, right? If you're on time, you're practically late. These are sayings and ideas that we have in the culture that we exist in. But some cultures, you might set a date for a meeting, and they might not show up. You know, this is important to understand, especially like in the Middle East, if you're trying to do relations with the population there, and you're waiting for them to show up and they don't show up until 2 or 3 hours, you might feel offended. But they don't have the same understanding of time as you do, because they might not necessarily be putting a value on it, which means to put a number on it. Because once we number it, then we can begin to value it. Why is that? Let's say you have money and you're spending it. If you're not watching where you're spending your money, you're just going to spend it. You're not going to think about it. But if you actually take the time to put a number on it, to value it, you know, then you're going to start to have an appreciation for it, as in you make it more valuable. The more that you look at it, right? This is what I'm actually saying. The more that you look at it and you give it a quantifying or qualifying aspect, quantifying, quantity being a number, quality being an adjective, like, oh, it's greater than, less than, right? It has a certain quality to it, or it's shinier. Diamonds are more valuable when we consider them to be shinier, or be, you know, whatever the case may be. So once you actually look at it and you put a number to it, then you begin to appreciate it. And appreciating things, I always tell people, if you appreciate me, you should raise my value, because that is what appreciation does. You can't just tell me you appreciate. Appreciation to me is an action verb. You got to show me you appreciate me by raising. So how do we appreciate things? We appreciate things through maintenance. Take care of it if you appreciate it, right? And in the long run, it gets better and better. And you know, you appreciate the car that I gave you because you're taking care of it, you're keeping it washed, and the value goes up. It's useful. So we have to begin to understand this concept of value and appreciation for matriarchal mathematics, because if we don't acknowledge that these things exist, because the first way that we value something is by first acknowledging it, you have to look at it, then we actually depreciate it. We lower the value, right? And what I'm saying basically here today is that is what's taking place in our society. We no longer understand the concept of feminine energy and matriarchal mathematics, and we literally don't put numbers to it. Like, we don't quantify some of these things, so we no longer see the value in why it is important to maintain harmony. Remember those aspects of Maya I was telling you about. Why is it important to be harmonious? Why is it important for us to have connectivity? How often are you able to connect with people, or how often are you falling out with people? You know, if we're not looking at that stuff, we're not valuing it, it in turn goes down and people just kind of do what they want to do, and the society begins to shift, right? That's why this is important, right? So another aspect we're going to talk, all right, so we talked about intrinsic value, that's like the internal things, right? Now we're going to talk about connectivity, okay? So in today's society, we're pretty much like iPhones, right? We have a lot of different capabilities, but most people want the coolest iPhone case. Everybody wants the coolest iPhone case, but nobody's really concerned about whether their Wi-Fi is working. When you make a call, can you actually connect to the other caller? Is that other caller able to hear you clearly? Are you able to hear them clearly? Okay. These are aspects dealing with connectivity that matriarchal mathematics will be able to answer. This is the science of looking into, the science of relationship that also deals with community, okay? Community. So that's connectivity, and then we're going to talk about systems, right? So patriarchal mathematics would generally say, I don't know, I'm just going to draw this real quick. You got force going this way. This is physics, if anybody remembers physics. You got a downward force. They got force going this way, friction stopping it. You got a downward force of gravity. It would show you the block, right? But instead of looking at the block, we would in turn look at the system, okay? Instead of the block, we look at the tree. How did the tree make the box move forward? How did everything else? So you might say, why is that important? Because until you acknowledge first, you put in the value that things, well, let me go back real quick. So another difference is the way that we approach mathematics today is we start abstract and then we go realistic, okay? So we start with these concepts like we sit down and we think about math. We say, we give abstract number of apples and stuff, and then the kid asks, why are we getting 150 apples, you know? That's the way that mathematics is approached today. We give concepts first, and then we try to apply them to realistic, or reality rather, to see like, how does this math even line up? Because half the time when we're sitting in class, we're like, I don't even know how I'd ever use this. You know, it's not very important. Matriarchal mathematics, in turn, looks at it the opposite way, where we deal with reality first, and then we discover the mathematics based upon what nature is naturally telling us, right? And when you deal with nature, you realize that force never exists alone. It never exists, because I think Isaac Newton said, object in motion stays in motion until it's acted upon by another force. But that never really exists anywhere. Everything is always in motion at all times, getting acted upon by every other force. We all have a magnetic, propulsion, repelling force, attracting force quality to all of us right now. You know, if you decide to run, let's say, put it this way, if one of you guys decide to run, right? Let's say you, Jones, you decide to run this way, right, at 25 miles per hour, but you see a cute girl on the side of the road. Does that make you speed up? Does that make you lean more so towards the right? You know, does that make you hold your back right? You know, these are aspects that are intuitive to what's going on to the real life situation, because we're looking at reality now. Because in reality, you are going to move shit. Like every time you put a cute girl there, he moves. You know, that is reality. So we look at reality first, and then we find out mathematical principles based upon that. You see, because there are other forces at play that we aren't necessarily valuing. We're not acknowledging. That tells more of the broader picture to what is actually going on here. You see what I'm saying? So that's why we would look at the system, like how, in what ways does the system support this movement? Like what else is at work here beyond just me flicking the box and friction stopping it, you know? And it also deals with community, and that ties back into the principles of connectivity, right? When we talk about how we are able to connect and stuff. So when we're talking about all of these concepts, these all happen to be feminine aspects, right? This is a feminine aspect approach to mathematics. And this also kind of paints the picture as to why femininity is important, right? And how can we tell? Let's see. So last time I spoke about how research was done, national, it was like the national medical, I don't want to misquote it, but research was done basically, and you can look this up, that when women cry, they actually release a hormone, or a chemical, rather, not a hormone, but they release a chemical that lowers aggression in men. So the tears of a woman literally is able to lower aggression. So that's one of the things that matriarchal mathematics will look at, like how are the relationships between people. And why is this important? Because we understand what magnetism is on a physical level. We understand that you get a magnetic, right? They often show you this, and you see these things moving out like that, you know. These iron shavings, they move in a pattern like this. And we understand how it works. But nobody really knows what magnetism is. You know, like we know that it works, but we don't know why that force is what it is. Like what is magnetism? What is that thing that's causing us to push and pull? I propose because humans are electromagnetic beings, where we act as one of the locks on these doors, where if you cut it on, it'll be stuck. But if you unlock it, the same magnet that you had on, whenever it's charged with that electricity, it can let go and it's no longer exhibiting its magnetic properties, right? That's kind of how we work, where we can naturally attract and repel each other, right? And I tend to think of that as the magnetic force because it's the same principle. But in patriarchal mathematics and the way that society is set up today, we often value external force. So the world is set upon how much can you produce in physical reality, results. How much sweat can you output in order to get a physical result. So because we don't value these things, we tend to shun, and we don't even look at the quality and the power that women innately have, but men can attain it too, the feminine aspects, which are what? So in order for me to move that car if it gets broken down on the side of the road, not theoretically, but in reality, I would have to push it as hard as I can with all my force, or call up my one or two friends in reality that I have, try to push it, right? And I have to exert so much force to get this car to move up the road. In order for a woman to do the same thing, all she has to do is sit back and ask. And that's a real aspect that's going on in reality, where she can get 10 guys to help push. She can get half her community to just come out and push it for her, which is a real power that nobody is looking at, because we don't value the aspects of femininity, being sweet, being nice, you know, smiling and waving and using some of your powers. But that same amount of force that a man has to use in order to do certain things, when a woman is or if anybody's in their feminine aspects and using skills of attraction, because men have the ability to possess these feminine aspects as well. Like, let's say you want a job. There's multiple ways to get a job. You can be very qualified for the job on paper, but how well are your feminine aspects of attraction? Like, are you clean shaven? Do you look appealing to the eye? That's feminine quality, you know? So these are the ways that matriarchal mathematics can be useful. Right, that's what I'm trying to illustrate for you guys in your brains here, okay? Other than that, I think that's pretty much going to conclude my class today, because I don't want to go too deep in like real mathematics for you guys. But yeah, I'm gonna end it here unless you guys have any questions. I just wanted to open that concept up to you so you can start thinking about just different ways that we are relating to each other in life, and different ways that you can start to think about how to get things done, because these aspects can be used both by men and women, but I'm going to leave the rest of it out for the video because I don't want to get too political. I'll go into, how it's actually showing up in today's society where, we aren't, I think a lot of people, especially women in general, do themselves a disservice by not practicing the power that they innately have, when they don't try to work on connectivity and things, because that's the things that a woman can do, a man literally cannot do it. There's no level of me getting pretty that I can get You know what I mean? They're going to be mad at me and not want to do it at all, but half of us do ourselves a disservice because of the way that society rewards you for being strong and taking on the 2 jobs and doing it all by yourself when, you know, you got other aspects that you can, you know, play with to obtain power, so to speak, you know. But that's my class for today. A little short, sweet one, a little talking point. You guys got any questions?
I kind of like the point you made at the end. It's kind of alluded to, I don't know the exact quote, but it was like, you know, you catch more flies with honey.
Exactly. I wrote that in my notes and I didn't say it. Yeah, that's right. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Yeah.
I know women can do that, but like men can do it as well. You know, you get more people to do stuff for you or with you if you're like kind instead of being aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But I think women can really take advantage of that.
Yeah, they would be able to naturally do. Oh, that's another thing I'll talk about too, real quick. Also, so there's also this concept. Because remember, we started off. You guys probably missed the first couple of classes. We started off talking about spirituality and proving how spirits are real in the higher dimension, whatnot. There's also a concept of inversion in spirituality, right? Where men are made physically strong in the 3D realm because we're spiritually weak in the spiritual realm, where women are made physically weak in the 3D realm because they're spiritually strong in the spiritual realm. Actually, women have a greater connection with their emotions and with their memory because they actually have a greater olfactory system. I don't know if I mentioned this was the word for it, but your olfactory is your sense of smell, right? And last time we talked about how smell is the only sense that bypasses your brain and it goes directly to your memory and emotional sensors. All of the senses like touch, sight, hearing, and thought, it all gets processed by the thalamus in your brain. So I also spoke last time about how the ancient Egyptians understood the science of smell, where smells can actually bring back vivid memories for you. And tend to, through what's known as the Proust effect. I spoke about this last time too, in case you missed it. You can look it up. The Proust effect is this sensation that when you smell something, you get transported back in time. It's a feeling that where you start crying, you might get a strong emotional response before you consciously are aware of what's going on. But that's just to say that women are more connected, literally, biologically, with their smell, with their noses, which is where we get intuition. And I'll also talk about intuition real quick as well. All right, so the olfactory system is tied with your intuition. And we can see this because we often see animals as being very intuitive to knowing what's going on before it happens. They might be looking in a corner or something because they are able to smell it, right? But how do we improve upon our intuition in everyday life? How do we do that as humans just in general? So one of the ways we improve upon our intuition is by problem solving. And this is also one of the reasons why we are becoming less and less intuitive in general in society. So nowadays everything is automated, as in the things that we had to do beforehand, back in the day, we no longer have to do. So for instance, maybe your ancestors at one point in time had to go out and catch their food, and then they also had to skin it and cook it. Now, through catching your food, skinning it, and cooking it, you don't realize, you might think you're just filling up your belly, but you actually gain insight into a lot of other areas of life that you would begin to understand life in general. Like you might understand anatomy a little bit better because you're familiar with how you're slicing that animal open and seeing the muscle structure and looking at some of the things that the animal has inside of it and understanding dietary things now, like, oh, this animal was eating this. Like you can see certain things and it might be a long drooling process, but by you going through the steps, the mundane work, you actually increase your knowledge base, okay? Intuition comes from your knowledge base, problem solving skills. How able are you to identify patterns, right? And the more patterns that you are aware of when you go through solving the problem, like I fixed the car this way, I put duct tape around it last time, I did this, I solved it in so many ways that when I see this pattern again, I'm aware of it. All right, so that's just on a patriarchal way when we're looking at end results, but people tend to think of intuition as well as, okay, I've been in this relationship before. I've seen this pattern before. I know how this ends because I was there before, you know? But once we start giving credence to our intuition, we don't really begin to master it. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we go through the same issues in life. A lot of people tend to go through the same problems because they're not actively working on their intuition. Like saying, okay, I see this, I'm going to actively get around this, rather than saying like they're leaving it up to maybe fate wants me to be here, or maybe, you know, rather than looking at it from a intuitive aspect of I'm going to increase my knowledge base, you know. But that's that on intuition and how you can improve your intuition skills. But basically, you want to improve your intuitive skills by going through the steps, problem solving. Instead of using ChatGPT, you want to write the problem out. You want to go through the hard work rather than using all these automated tools, and you will begin to also make new connections in your mind, right? Because that's what happens when we're learning. We're creating new structures in our brain that our brains are able to identify new patterns, and then we're able to translate that to other areas of life. And I was cooking this deer all my life. Now when I go to anatomy class, I magically got it. I don't magically have it, I just know a little bit more. Or I've actually gotten around this problem before, but it doesn't work if you never get around the problem, okay? So it's important to identify certain aspects of our lives and actively work on making the situation how we want it to be, right? Working on our intuition. All right, so I said I would tell you guys about the intuition, and there was something else I think I wanted to talk to you guys about. This is a short, sweet class because it's just an introduction. Because I have my my nerd off when I'm alone. I'll be working on my own equations to how can we increase attractiveness. So we know beauty is highly associated with attractiveness. So there's certain ways to make yourself more beautiful. Symmetry is associated with attractiveness. Smell is associated with attractiveness. So you look at the whole system as to how it can move this thing forward without exerting the most force. Because the one that's able to exert the least amount of force and get the same work done is actually more powerful. You know? So a woman who doesn't have to do half the things the guy can do, it's actually more powerful. That's to me called using the force that you have, but not really paying credence to. But I don't know what all I want to share here, so I'm just gonna. Again, I guess this is the end. I'll let you guys have any more questions on the introduction to Matriarchal Mathematics. This is going to be a quick discussion today. That's my class, guys. Thank you guys for attending. It was short and sweet today. I didn't keep it long-winded.